our guest, Sedale Turbovsky from OpenGrants. You can always recognize him by his iconic glasses. And I will hand it over to him to give his introduction.
Yeah, of all the things that are iconic about Sedale, wouldn't focus on the glasses, but at any rate.
I think he has great glasses.
Thanks, gentlemen. Yeah, super excited to be here. So my name is Sedale Turbovsky. I am the CEO and co-founder of OpenGrants. We are the easy way to win grant funding. But yeah, I actually started my career in particular in the clean tech kind of ecosystem and space. I even founded a climate tech, clean tech focused company called Carbon Blue. But over the course of my career, both working in the space, but also working as a person managing grant projects and grant funding, developed a deep passion and really like a fascination with the abundance of grant funding money that was out there, which was really exciting and fun. But also, developed an equal distaste for the very low utility that comes along with this abundant resource. So that's why I founded OpenGrants. But it's also why I just encourage folks that to, do what you can to look past some of the shortcomings of that ecosystem and really dive in and look at the opportunities. Yeah, very excited to chat about grant funding. It's something that I have not only a lot of kind of subject matter expertise with, but also just a deep appreciation for the role that it's going to play and does play in developing, de-risking and deploying clean technology all over the world, particularly in California, which is quite exciting. We have access to one of the more robust funding schemes in the contiguous states. So yeah, happy to be here.
All right. So one thing I want to kind of ask is there's a lot of kind of fear around grants. So what's one thing that, what's the most common thing you hear from people about, I guess, their fear of going after grants or their apprehension?
I think a lot of the thing, I think the overwhelming common theme is, generally speaking, that people don't want to sink a bunch of time and energy, which is frequently required, into something that they don't feel confident that they're going to be successful with, right? So for a lot of people, they look at grants and they're like, we might get this and we might not, which is really, it's one way to think about it for sure, but it is not the only way to think about it. And with the right kind of tools and team, it can be much more of an equation of, we will probably or definitely get this and we should spend our time on it. And even if we don't get it, we're going to create something incredibly valuable. And that's a different perspective that I think people should switch to. That's much healthier.
So you've been part of a lot of grant applications, and with a lot of organizations that have helped, design the grants and apply for the grants. How do you approach grants if you were to see one?
Yeah, I think the methodology that I've seen be most effective is a very intentional one, which is to say that, you don't want to be reactive to a grant, which is, you see it, you're like, oh, this is great, let's apply for it. Ideally, months before our grant is actually released that a grant is coming, and you have been building a relationship, and you have, with the grantor, and you are part of that ecosystem. And a lot of this comes down to two things. One, just network, but also showing up really authentically for your community. So whatever it is, and I say community in the very broad sense, so it could be the climate tech community, or it could be the clean tech community, or it could be your, it could be land park, like whatever you define as your community and where you're working. So for the purpose of this discussion, let's talk about like clean tech, right? Is being part of that community, connecting with people, delivering value, so that by the time a grant is out, you not only know that it's coming, but ideally you've been part of the public process of developing the grant, which means that you've gone to the meetings, you've submitted comments, you've really ensconced yourself as part of not only a subject matter expert, but a good partner. And so that's really like the most effective way, is to really think about grantors, people who are deploying capital as your partners, as your business partner, and do what you can to provide a lot of value to them, and they will in return provide you with grant money, generally speaking.
I think this is a good time to shout out that people should always reach out to the California Energy Commission, their local air board, utilize LinkedIn, and also, as we had mentioned before, Empower Innovation as a place where they can look for building these networks. Now, have you ever applied for a grant that you didn't get?
No, but I have applied for grants that required some shenanigans to get. All that to say that I think that sometimes oh no, you know what? I actually have applied for a grant that I didn't get one time, but I will say that sometimes there is a opportunity to encourage the grantor to revisit their decision. And a lot of this, once again, hinges on being a good partner, right? If you roll in and you're like, oh, we didn't get this, but we really should have been funded, and we know you have money left, but you're just like, Joe from the street, and they don't know you from the next guy on the street, that's one thing. But if you've been at the meetings and you've been participating and providing feedback, they're much more inclined to think about a little bit more about what you're doing and revisit this. And of course, it's not always a process that you can take advantage of, but sometimes it is. And in one of our cases, it certainly was, where we were able to go back to the agency and say, look, we know that you have money left in this program. We see that you passed our application, but you didn't fund it, and that seems strange to us, and we'd like to know more. And because of the relationship that we developed with that agency and the people there, we were able to have a very good, well-reasoned discussion, and we were able to, encourage them to fund our project, and they went ahead and funded it because of some of the reasons that we discussed together. So I bring that up just to say that it's so important to, I think, especially as entrepreneurs and business people, I think sometimes we view the government or these people we're trying to get money from as somehow antagonistic. Like there's some sort of I think sometimes, and I think it's very incorrect, but sometimes there's this feeling like, oh, we have to get the money from them. Not that, oh, we're providing this really cool opportunity for us to collaborate, and the money is just this thing that makes the opportunity go. And it's a much healthier outlook. And I think that it's one that, if more companies could embrace and more people in the space could embrace, we really could have, our original tagline with OpenGrants was, crafting ideal public-private partnerships. And it's kind of wordy, and we like the easy way to win grants much better. But there's a lot of that where it's like, just build a better relationship and you'll have better outcomes.
I want to hear a little bit more about, you talked about that that these aren't, that the government agencies, whether the CEC, Air Resources Board, they're doing it because they're getting something from you. And of course, these aren't really profit-seeking ventures from them, but they have their own metrics that they're trying to achieve. So what are some ways, intuitive ways, where someone could, figure out, what the metrics or what they're being judged on for this grant, that could help someone, better win the grant? How would they go and figure out, what's really important to the person giving out the grant money?
Yeah, I mean, the first most basic thing is, of course, in the RFP itself, there's a rubric, generally speaking, with actual points. Like, it's like you get X amount for doing this kind of thing, and it tells you what a good score looks like. And anyone who's been to any kind of schooling probably is familiar with what a rubric is. So there's that. That's the first thing to do. And honestly, competing on the rubric and writing for points is really important, and it will get you in the same realm as like the other people who are winning, which is nice, but it's just a baseline, right? So that's the first thing, is read the rubric, read the RFP, the request for proposals very closely, and you get very familiar with that, and make sure you're writing for points and optimizing for each section of the rubric. Once you've done that, the next thing to understand is how to really tap into more some of the existential or sort of macro incentives that the agency might have. And that just involves understanding what their kind of strategic plan is and their strategic goals. And once again, this is about building relationships and meeting with the program people and understanding, hey, we are, we're trying to get more EVs on the road, really, or we're trying to do more with like multifamily housing. So maybe make that part of your proposal, right? So there's things that go beyond the rubric that like relate to sort of the larger ecosystem or the larger goals of any given agency. And a lot of that's just understanding the agency itself and what their goals are and what they're trying to achieve. And once again, that's from building that relationship. So read the rubric and then meet with people. Like go have conversations, have phone calls, have Zoom meetings, whatever you need to do to understand the incentives that you're knitting together as part of your narrative.
So I kind of interpret that as like for a local air district, they might put something out there about helping people install charging infrastructure, but one of their top line goals is reducing local emissions in their emissions inventory. So including how you're doing that in a grant proposal might make you sound better, even though if that's not specifically in the grant.
Yeah, and they may have things, another popular one, there's a lot of agencies that have some kinds of like diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. They may have different like goals for certain specific neighborhoods in our local area. And so understanding those, while they may not always be part of the RFP, but understanding that, hey, there's ways for us to really deeply align our project with the agency or with the grantor. It's really important.
And if anyone's wondering how to find out that information kind of about the neighborhoods that people are looking at, if you're in the Sacramento area, I suggest looking at the Sustainable Communities Resource Map that SMUD has, because it's a great resource for, I'm going to put a link to it in the chat. It's a great resource for finding out those things. Now, you kind of talk about like, how do you go for those, those extra high metrics? Now, anyone who's in the entrepreneurship circle and, pitching to VCs, you have to balance your pitch between, double what you can practically do and unicorn for what your return should be. And everyone says, don't go high, but that's a whole nother discussion. So when you're filling out this grant, it's kind of like somewhat like a pitch. You're pitching your solution to. But I wouldn't, I think everyone would recommend not pitching that you're a unicorn to the government. Because one, they probably won't believe you, and worst case scenario, they believe you. But how would you, how should someone, I guess, measure their goals or set their goals when writing a grant for something that's practical and understandable to the people reviewing? Something that I guess is achievable.
Yeah, a couple notes on this. One is, the cool thing about writing grants is that you're defining the metrics by which you are ultimately going to be judged to a certain extent. Now, there are obviously in the RFPs, there may be some specific requirements about things they want to have accomplished, but a lot of times you're defining sort of those metrics for success. And I'm definitely guilty of this. Like, under promise, over deliver is like the mantra, right? Like everyone has heard that. And there's some people who are really good at it and some people are very bad at it. And I definitely fall into that very bad at it camp. But I have a COO who's like, a baller and he makes sure that I don't say things that are insane. So I think that finding like that pragmatist person, there's going to be sort of minimum kind of metrics, generally speaking, in the RFP. You usually will have often the opportunity to ask them what kind of impacts they're looking for you to create and what they expect to see for their money. And so that's another conversation to have that you should definitely ask. I would say that most of the time, if you can strip out ambiguity and get them to give you metrics, that's the best, right? It's like if you can say what metrics you want to see and they give them to you, you're like, great, that's the metrics. I'd say that, under promising, over delivering is great. And you want to just manage that as best you can. Sometimes it's a little bit hard, but frequently you will be able to ask and say, what size award do you expect to make? Like they'll have a number. Usually they'll say, look, there's $100 million in this program and we want to make 10 awards of $10 million. You typically say something like that. They'll provide you some info and they'll probably provide you, some additional metrics like, for that $10 million, we expect to see X. And so generally speaking, you can strip out and get to the heart of the matter if they haven't published it explicitly. But once again, you definitely don't want to be super off the mark with your numbers. Everyone understands, and I think this is one thing to be really aware of, is like everyone understands that it's not going to be great necessarily. Like it's things are hard, people miss their marks, that's fine. Like you're not gonna, it's not fraud or like gross negligence if you're off by a little bit, like, you know. But if you're telling them like we're gonna educate 10,000 people and you only educate 10, then you know there's going to be some questions and you might be getting in trouble. So you want to be realistic, but you also want to do as much as you can to help them define those metrics for you. That way, you know, you're coming out the gate ahead and everyone's on the same page.
I think that's excellent advice. I want to kind of go back to something that you had mentioned on after applying for a grant and then it not getting funded, getting feedback on it. How, you know, I guess what's the best way to, I guess, to one, get feedback and then kind of understand that feedback? Because I'll take it from kind of my impression sometimes, you know, the feedback's not necessarily if you make these changes, you would have gotten it, but it's, well, we have to give you feedback.
Yes.
Like I said, a two-part question. What's the best way to seek feedback on a grant? And I guess after it's closed, and how should you kind of interpret that or weigh that?
Yeah, a couple things. This unfortunately really depends on the agency, right? So, for example, SBIR at the federal level gives some of the most like generic, odd feedback as like a general thing. But then if you follow up, you know, the program directors and folks within SBIR are quite wonderful, very approachable people. And you can generally get an email and get a meeting together. And I'll say the same for the Energy Commission here in California. Great staff. You can literally request like a follow-up kind of feedback meeting post when you close an award, and they'll give you feedback on like your grant. Like during your like final meeting with them, they'll do like a project review and give you feedback on a successful award. And so there are formal processes that are sort of defined at some agencies, like Energy Commission, as just mentioned. And then there are very informal processes that are just out there as like, you know, just sort of like dependent on your relationship with these people. And so, you know, there's different agencies that do different levels. I see Adam here on the Zoom, and you know, big fans of the Energy Commission's process, by the way. Yeah, so there's different ways to do that in different places.
I've got to respond because you gave us a shout out. First of all, thank you, Thomas and Sedale, for making this happen. Yeah, I was just going to sit back and listen and absorb, but you're absolutely right. We're here not as an antagonist. We're here as a cooperative partner. And I think that you touched on something that I really want to stress, is that sometimes you learn by losing. When you put a proposal together and you don't make it, by all means, ask for a debrief. A lot of people just sort of kick their proposal down the road and they go, oh, it was a waste of time. And no, you learn. I mean, the first time Abraham Lincoln ran for office, he lost. I think the first 3 times, actually. So absolutely. I mean, this is a state agency at its best. You know, we want you to succeed.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. It's a cooperative thing. We're all kind of in this together. I want to throw a question to Sedale, and we'll throw some or ask some from the audiences. So, how can someone use? How can someone use, I guess, OpenGrants to get to go after grants? Or what's kind of OpenGrants' role in successfully applying for grants and finding them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, you know, I think there's 2 things we've mentioned a lot today, but I'm going to start with the one I think is most important, and Adam brought it up, is that there is to this day a lot of relationship-based things that are facilitated within these groups. And I'm not saying that from like a collusion standpoint or a bad thing, but everyone here is looking for good partners to get good work done. And to a large extent, that is a common theme amongst grantors. And one of the big things that OpenGrants offers is a network of individuals who can help you build those partners. So if you go on the OpenGrants platform, there's two things you can do. One is you can create a profile, and we will use AI and ML to match you to grant funding opportunities that are relevant for your space. So you go to opengrants.io, you sign up for free, you create a profile, and based on the information of that profile, we start matching you to grant opportunities. And that's really wonderful. But I think the really cool thing that we unlock is that, say you want to go after a CEC grant, for example. We have the people who win all the CEC grants all the time. We have incredible firms on our platform, and you don't necessarily need to hire them to go out and be successful. But one thing that I find that a lot of entrepreneurs don't have, just by virtue of the fact that you're an entrepreneur and maybe didn't come from this space, is they don't have a lot of relationships at these agencies, and they don't have that way in to help them navigate what is often I find very welcoming, just it's sort of a dizzying maze of bureaucracy, and it can be hard to navigate. And so knowing the right people to talk to is an important aspect of like doing this efficiently. And so OpenGrants does have a marketplace. We have over 200 firms on our platform. Some of them are, 1 or 2 people, some of them are 40 people, and they are all organized by their expertise. So say you need to find someone at the Ford Foundation, you can do that. Say you need to find someone at NSF's SBIR, you could do that. If you need to find someone at the Energy Commission, you can do that. So those are 2 of the big things I suggest people use OpenGrants for. One is just getting connected to the right grant funding, understanding what you're eligible for, and then also understanding how to make those connections and build those relationships. And of course, you can hire the consultants to help you write the proposals and do all that stuff. But that's really secondary to one of the things that we're super excited about, which is just to start building these connections and helping people understand that there really are these partners in government and in these large institutions who are looking to deploy grants, and they're looking for good partners to work with. And so a big part of being successful is building that relationship. And sometimes that takes a little bit of help from a network of people who already have those relationships.
Now, we've got a good question from Lewis in the chat here. I'm going to start with the first one because I think OpenGrants is one of the things that you were looking to solve with OpenGrants is that how do you keep up with all the grants and how everything's kind of changing? Just looking at one seems time consuming and exhausting. How can someone, keep up with all the grant stuff? And is that something that OpenGrants kind of, in my opinion, kind of does, right?
Yeah, we monitor everything and update and refresh our database every day. So we do have, humbly the best data set of public grant funding that's available all in one place, right? So we have federal, state, local. We actually had the wonderful opportunity to help provide inputs and insights into the design process for California's grants.gov portal, which we now tap into the API for our data set. We pull BetaSAM, EPA, we pull grants.gov, we pull California's grants.gov. We pull it all together in a nice data set. And that uses a variety of data engineering APIs. We use a variety of scraping tools, and we also use human beings to keep all that stuff up to date. And so, if you do have an OpenGrants profile, you'll get emails that say, hey, there's more grants. Yeah, you've got grants. That's the email we send out. Actually, you'll see this, you've got grants from OpenGrants, and we'll tell you about programs that you're tracking or matched with.
And I want to highlight that because it was mentioned in it, whatever grant you're applying, make sure you read it at least 3 times before you decide to go for it. It might seem onerous, but you don't want to go and apply for a grant. You don't want to go and apply for a grant that isn't a good fit for you, or they literally put metrics there that you're not able to, meet, or something that you don't want to do. Now, Lewis had a professional question about what I guess are you asking what the largest grant possible is on there, or are you asking? I'm not quite sure about your professional question that you have there. Okay, so what's the largest grant that is on your platform, and Are there any from Canada? I believe you have, I believe you're nationwide on grants. And I know there's grants in there for the clean tech and for startups in the clean tech and energy space. But one thing I'll highlight that if you are in the clean tech or energy space, hold on, I'm just, if you're in the clean tech or energy space, that as a startup, you probably want to go and try to seek out partners to work with and really pursue the networking angle, because it'll really help you, one, pick up some of the load from it, and also make sure that there's people that, you know, the grant, going after the grants in their core competency where they can take advantage of your technology. So what is the largest grant, and do you plan on going to Canada?
Yeah, so we do have aspirations to expand, you know, internationally. Honestly, Canada's grant programs are much easier to navigate, frankly. It is nice to be aware of them, but I think our value proposition would be a little muted in Canada, frankly. So we have Canadian companies that use our platform to find grants in the United States, but vice versa, not so much. But yeah, so we do have plans to expand internationally next year, which is exciting, and we'll be making more announcements about that in the coming months. But yeah, I think, man, I think the largest grants are probably big Medicaid stuff. So those are probably the biggest ones that we see. And obviously those are for governments. Now, the other thing that I will note is that the largest grants probably for startups are DoD's SBIR program, in particular, like phase 3 grants. So I know of a friend who got a $60 million grant earlier this year from the DoD for his like a phase 3 SBIR award. And so that's like, you know, that's an example of how compelling it and why the SBIR program is so competitive. Certainly great fits in SBIR for clean tech and climate related solutions. So definitely that's a place to go. The initial grants in SBIR are really just like, you know, usually like 100K, and then a phase 2 can be depending on where you are. So at the DoD, it's usually like 50 to 100K, and then a phase 2 is quite a bit larger, and a phase 3 is uncapped. On the other hand, you have like NSF SBIR, which follows much more specific kind of phases. So they're usually 100 to 250K initially, 1 to 1.5 for your phase 2, and then a phase 3 once again can be kind of uncapped. Obviously, SBIR, because the budget amount for SBIR for each individual participating agency is based on their total budget. And when you think about who gets the most money in the United States federal government, in SBIR, it's DoD. That's why they have such massive phase 3 awards. Anyways, all of that to say, the big grants go to government, and that's really an exciting place to partner for climate tech companies, especially on the infrastructure side. But yeah, the biggest ones are not super relevant for this audience, which are probably like Medicaid and Medi-Cal grants.
Yeah. I'm going to call on Gary to see if he has any questions that he wants to pose.
Yeah, so thanks so much for providing all this information. You said that you scrape a number of sources, and one of the ones we've had discussion on before is CARB's funding wizard.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to pull together similarly funding opportunities from the network that they have. So I assume that you take advantage of the CARB wizard too, and getting it into your system.
Yeah. CARB funding wizard is great. They tend to do a lot of very good coverage of like special districts in particular. We found that sometimes their data is a little stale on occasion, but yeah, we pull from quite a few sources, and that is one of them.
So, what are some of the examples that you successfully help people get grants for in the clean tech area? No names basis, but just how much of the business that you're doing is really clean tech oriented, for example?
Yeah, it's actually quite a bit, mostly because that's kind of where I started my career. So my own kind of personal network in terms of like, hey, I made this new company, come use it kind of thing, has been there a lot. We were just at Verge as well, which was an incredible conference in this space. And I had a great time speaking on a panel there. So yeah, I'd say, a good chunk we did start out focused on like early stage deep tech, which is a lot of like climate and clean tech as well. I was also a founding fellow of the On Deck Climate Tech, the very first cohort there. So yeah, I did, ultimately just through my own kind of network and interests, have attracted and worked with quite a few companies in this space. Two of the big firms and investors, one of them is an investor, and another one's just a big firm in this space, both, Momentum, which is locally based firm that focuses on this, is a user of our platform and an investor. And then we also work very closely with Climate Finance Solutions. We're very, proud to have them as as one of the firms in our platform. And so, yeah, we do a lot in that space. We were not responsible for Climate Finance's recent like $100 million quarter, but they just recently pulled down $100 million for climate tech related startups just last quarter. So lots. I honestly, off the top of my head, don't know the specifics, but can definitely say that a good chunk, probably more than a quarter of our business is very focused on this space, and then government really takes up the large amount of it, in particular because those grants are just so much bigger.
Well, I mean, you've raised a very interesting point there that about which we should be aware. In building a network, you've focused it on dealing with the grant agencies, but actually the grant agencies have a network. And what's your view on how working on the grant side could leverage you into a network with things like Climate Finance Solutions or other venture capital people? Because in my experience, they're on the hunt too for fundable companies and fundable ideas. So it looks like a second order effect of what you're doing is connecting you with a much broader funding network.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. I know you've heard me speak, but I do talk a lot about the use of grants as a tactical, tool within the capital stack for founders. And we certainly have a viewpoint of, we want to not only help companies find grants, but of course we want them to be connected to a larger ecosystem of funders. So like one of the things that we talked about on our panel at Verge, and I'm very excited to mention, is that we work closely with Enduring Planet. And Enduring Planet has a grant advance product where if you get a grant, they'll help you, close that gap where you don't have to wait 6 months to get your money. So if you have an award that's been announced, you can go submit that to Climate Finance Solutions, and they will get you up to $500,000, within 30 days instead of, sometimes you might wait 2 to 4 months or a year to get your funding. So that's just one innovation that we're excited to see in the space, and we hope to be announcing more in the near future. I think there's a role for venture capital to play, certainly. Statistically speaking, companies that raise grants are 2 times more likely to raise a successful Series A and have created a ton of really great, venture returns as commercial companies. So there's a huge opportunity here. And then the other thing I'll mention, because I saw it in the chat really briefly, people are always saying, oh, we need partners to work with. And that's the other exciting thing about this network is that, the agencies have their network, the funders have their network. There's a lot of people who don't necessarily have like that, that port partner or that university partner or that infrastructure partner. And that's the other exciting thing that we want to keep pushing on, is the ability to quickly and efficiently really pull together partners, so that on these big kind of cross-functional teams that are doing DOE and CEC projects, we can say, oh, look, here's the ecosystem in Reading that makes sense for this really new, new mobility innovation or what have you. So yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity to better help the ecosystem at large get away from their siloed data sets and collaborate more efficiently.
So, your business model, just to be specific on that, you encourage people to create a profile with you, and you'll send them information on opportunities that might be a fit for them. Is that a fee for membership service? Is that something you're offering for free? Just exactly how do you work with people to get them in the door?
Yeah, so there's 2 options. We have a freemium platform. So there's a free account that works great and gives you access to all of the things I mentioned. At $29 a month, you can cancel anytime. You get access to unlimited. So we do throttle back the AI matching at a point on your free account. But you still have access to actually search through all the grants and connect with folks in the marketplace. And then you also get access to, on our Pro subscription, you get access to, more granular filters in our search. So like you wanted to drill down just on DOE or ARPA-E, you could do that, and you can set queries up and save things to your profile, and better track grants that are saved to your profile, that kind of thing. So, but where we make money, so that's only about 10% of our revenue. We actually, our customer in all of this are the grantors. They are always looking for better data. They're looking for better information, how to better design their RFP programs, that kind of thing. And they're also looking to provide technical assistance. So they are looking to connect communities and entrepreneurs with the right consulting teams and technical assistance teams to help them put together good proposals, because they want to fund people who are doing good work. And sometimes the barrier to access is less about, the money itself or the proposal, and more about just navigating that nuance and getting the right documents in place, that kind of stuff. So we provide services to the grantors, and that's where we call it our enterprise services, but that's where we make our money.
Well, that's very interesting, and that does mean that you're getting deeply connected with a lot of the granting sources.
Yes,
so
that's the vision.
That's sort of a virtuous circle there, because the deeper you get involved with them, the more help you can give people looking for grants, and the more people you have looking for grants, the more information you can feed back to the granting agencies as to improvements they could make. So I think you found a pretty good sweet spot there, Sedale.
Thank you. It's getting there. We've been working on it for a minute, and we're very excited about where it is these days. So
yeah, I've been working at it very diligently. I can virtually guarantee you we're going to have you back for a longer program and get a collection of people together that may be interested in using first the freemium service and then seeing what they get there going pro. So I think this has been highly useful this morning, just to get people educated on what you have. And it is kind of daunting when you look at all these grant possibilities, just how much stuff you have to read through and even being efficient. At any rate, I think you've got some good tools here started, and glad to have you in the network.
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give Adam from the CEC if he wants to throw anything out there.
Why did I expect? Why did I know that was coming, Tom? I happy to be. Again, happy to be on this call. I was not planning on speaking, but I do want to say something. There is a sort of drinking from the fire hose vibe that people who for the first time don't know how to proceed. I was going to ask you, Sedale, what is the one piece of wisdom that you would tell people not to worry about, or what is the one piece of wisdom that you would suggest to somebody who's just starting out?
I think that avoiding that fire hose, certainly by approaching this very intentionally, which is to say that don't come to this space like needing money. Unfortunately, like, come to this space with the time to build the relationships. It's one of those things, like the best time to plant a tree 10 years ago, right? Like the best time to get started building these relationships is, 10 years ago, whenever you started. Don't come to this space in a rush, I guess, is the key. I know we all, like as entrepreneurs, we're always needing money. We always are looking at runway and all this stuff, but don't come to this space trying to like get a quick buck, because that's just probably not going to happen. It happens sometimes, but it probably won't. Come to this space with the intention of building relationships, having long-term relationships and partnerships with people, and then be very intentional about how you start to build those relationships and take them further, potentially by asking for money and getting some capital in and working on some grants.
I I couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's nice that it's. I just trying to do ventriloquism. You did it. You did a perfect job. I would say that the one thing that, in an effort to build those long-term relationships, go to workshops that the ARB are having. Go to the Epic Symposium that recently happened at the Energy Commission. Go to Verge. Invest in yourself and invest in the long-term goals. I mean, I think that, you know, planting a tree is good. Planting 100 trees is better. We're at a tipping point, and I'm not going to get, you know, philosophical here, but the place that you come to when you come to this in an authentic space about growing a clean energy future for California, that's legitimate. And I think that the more you can learn, whether it's reading our blog or whether it's subscribing to our listserv, I was not expecting a promo for Empower Innovation, but I will tell you, it is a great platform, empowerinnovation.net. We just celebrated our 3rd birthday. We're over 3,000 members. There's $14 billion in funding there. We've done all the heavy lifting. We made it easy for you guys to find, for everyone to find it. Don't go for the quick buck, go for the long haul. So here endeth the lesson.
All right.
What birthday was it for Empower Innovation, Adam?
We just had our
10
3rd
years?
birthday. We just turned 3 years old.
Nice.
Janaea Scott launched it in 2019. Remember 2019? It was a thing once upon a time.
Yeah, right. I kind of skipped 3 years in between.
Whatever.
But
I was just planning on being a fly in the wall in this conversation, but I'm glad I could add some content and value.
well, we appreciate it, Adam. And with that, I'm going to offer Sedale. Any last word you want to say?
No, I think just go to OpenGrants, sign up, keep building what you're doing. Y'all are doing really cool work, and deeply appreciate Thomas and Gary for putting this together and keeping this great org rolling along as well. So yeah, huge fan of what y'all are doing. Thanks for having me. And yeah, happy to be a resource. I'm here based locally. Follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, hit me up.
Yeah. And if for some reason you've decided to flee Twitter this week, OpenGrants has a way that you can network along with Empower Innovation.
That's right.
And with that, I'm going to start wrapping things up here.
Allow me, may I say one more thing, Tom?
Sure.
Very, very quickly. December 4th, the Energy Commission is doing their Clean Energy Hall of Fame Awards. December 8th. And that is a great way, both virtual and in person, to get to meet people. And check us out, energy.ca.gov.
All right. Thank you very much. I want to thank Sedale for being our guest today and answering our questions. I want to thank all of you for attending and encourage you to reach out to us, whether it's email, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Yeah, we're still there. YouTube. This is on YouTube right now. If you want to go be able to share it with other people, check out our YouTube channel. We're on Instagram. We have our website and Empower Innovation. So connect with us. Thank you for attending. I want to thank all of our supporters and sponsors, and additional thanks to our smaller our other sponsors, and look forward to seeing you guys in the future. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, I'll put a plug in that today is the awards announcement for the Sacramento Innovation Awards. So there'll be a sustainability award that announced this afternoon by 5 o'clock. So watch for the news on that.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye.